base. It says, Al pi amavur ba'maimer, according to what is explained in the Maimer. Whose Maimer? Very good. Friedrich Rebbe's Maimer, which this is based on. That through their Mesiris Nefesh of Matisyahu and his children, they drew down this light which is above the Yishtalshlus, which we're calling Havaya de La'ela, right? The higher Havaya. Not to be confused with the higher Yichud, which is the lower Havaya. They got themselves up to the higher level of Havaya, which is beyond even what we were calling before Yichud Ilah. All right, and how do they access it? We said a moment ago from their Mesiris Nefesh, which was unearthed from the darkness itself, trying to overtake them. So once they access this light, Yesh Lomar, Shagam Shoresh Hanes Nitzachon Milchama Hu B'Havaya de La'ela Shlomayla Mishtal Shalus. So we can say that also the root of the miracle of the victory of war, which happened on which day? The 24th. It also came from Havaya de La'ela, which is above the Seder Ishtalshalus. Now we have to sort of go back for a second and remind ourselves, which even in our review, which we just did a moment ago, we forgot to review the actual beginning, which was the leading question, which was why was there no miracle, like a holiday established on the 24th of Kislev, when that seemingly was the main miracle, the day that we actually overcame the Greek army.
Right.
It's not even part of the holiday, right? And then we had a secondary question that followed that up, which is why do we not add something to the holiday on the 26th when the supernatural, like extremely supernatural element manifested, where the light started going past its natural time for lighting, the extra oil, etc. Oops. Now, going back to there, what we're saying is once we say that through the infinite light was accessed through the Mesiris Nefesh of Matisyahu and his children, where they ultimately, what did we just say? That when someone has Mesiris Nefesh, they trigger the 26th level light, right? They trigger the light, which is called Havaya de La'ela. And when did that happen? That happened on the 24th of Kislev, right? Because that's when they had the Mesiris Nefesh.
So again, seemingly, the question, right?
The question is begged again. Seemingly, they had access to the Havaya de La'ela already on the 24th, but it's not even part of the holiday, mind you. So he says, Ki Mesiris Nefesh. So Matisyahu Banav, their Mesiris Nefesh was such, Shagam Shahayu Chalashu Ma'atim, even though they were weak and few, Mikol Mekom Lachmu Neged Giborim V'Rabim, they nonetheless fought against the mighty and the strong and the many. The Kevan Sha'ayde Mesiris Nefesh Lehem, and since through their Mesiris Nefesh, he puts that in parentheses, but it's very, very important, right? The Mesiris Nefesh concept is that it's above the Hishtalshlus of man. So there's the Hishtalshlus of reality, and there's the Hishtalshlus of you, right? So just like God has a finite rays of himself, so to speak, which are part of creation and therefore are limited and can be contained in vessels, and he has parts of him which are beyond that limitation in vessels, so too in man, who is like a little world, we have parts of ourselves which are limited, measurable, and containable. Primarily those are the 10 spheros of man, mind and heart, which are all limited powers, right? Your mind understands up until here. Once it's past understanding, you say, I don't know, it's beyond understanding. Right? Your emotions can be contained in yourself. If you can't really contain an emotion, it's like you faint or something, right? Like there's aspects of your general day-to-day life. You're all dealing with aspects of your soul which measure and limit themselves to be perceivable and put into vessels of your mind and your heart. But there is such a thing called the beyond Hishtalshlus of man, which means sometimes, you hear these stories about, like, God forbid, like a woman's child is trapped into the car. She just like lifts up like a monster truck and gets her child out of there. People can just like produce infinite powers. And if you don't want to say that that's you're not capable of that, maybe getting out of bed in the morning for Hasidus class could even be such a thing, because your mind and your heart are telling you not to do that. So what is the power that's basically generating your ability to sort of overcome yourself? Is that you can tap into something which does not have to make sense and something that you don't feel, right? And this is ultimately, you can take on an entire Greek army, Or you can go out into the street in the middle of a sunny day with your tefillin and just start stopping Jews and ask them, excuse me, are you Jewish? Would you like to put on tefillin today? Which ultimately goes against your sensitivities of what makes you a normal person, right? But you're going to do it anyway. And Chanuka. So there's all, and why am I bringing these examples? Because this is like the Rebbe's trying to sort of, instigate, thank you, our supernatural qualities by pushing us to do irrational things all the time, right? Like, for example, you should establish your life by going to some foreign country where you don't speak the language and there's no kosher schools or kosher food, and that's where you should settle, right? Where like, and you'll take over the whole city and it'll become like your town, Mr. Chabad. That's an insane thing to do. And not only it's like, I'm going to go out on a sunny Friday afternoon, I'm going to establish my life on like craziness, basically. So why is this like the way? Because anything we can do to sort of trigger the bechol miodecha inside of you, that your everything, all your might should be triggered. So obviously, when you're few and weak fighting the strong and the many, this accesses the l'mayla mishtalshlush of Adam, that which is above your own seder mishtalshlush.
But you still at that spot.
Hamshichu ha'or shel l'mayla mishtalshlush. And when they triggered that inside themselves, boom, they uncovered the real and true unlimited light, which is kind of a gift that Hashem gives us. He gives us the controls, even when you're gonna go beyond yourself, you're still very much limited. For example, there's another person sitting right next to you who for them that might not be considered b'chol miyodecha at all. It's only b'chol miyodecha lashon yachid in the singular. But for you, it's beyond your boundaries. But it's not necessarily beyond boundaries. You haven't done something which is actually infinite and beyond boundary altogether. But Hashem gave us a gift that when you trigger your own beyond boundary level, you just go beyond your own intellectual framework, it actually touches onto the true boundlessness of the Or Ein Sof. That's something Hashem just basically gave us, right? Access to.
Good gift.
And so therefore, when they had Mesiras Nefesh against the entire Greek army, it awakened and triggered the light of the 26th level, right? The Havaya de La'ela, the higher Havaya.
But we shouldn't request obstacles, right? I mean,
you don't have to.
Not if you're.
They're all around.
Yeah. I just really briefly. I read that when Yosef ran away from the wife of Potiphar, because he was overcoming his nature,
right?
That triggered the Red Sea to split and overcome her nature.
Okay.
And that merit of Yosef Atzadik was for the sea. So
okay.
There
you go.
Wow.
Nice. You got a wow out of Adam. That's good. I wait the whole day to get that wow.
I'm telling you,
I'm serious,
that's
man.
what God says.
It makes me happy.
Says, wow.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What is the actual practical method by which to access this sincerity?
Beyond what's comfortable for you. You got your nature. You have a nature.
Just to push your comfort zone.
Yeah. You have a nature, and then you're something beyond your nature. Like, let's say, like you get into like a quarrel with someone, and then all of a sudden you pick up the phone and apologize. That's beyond your nature completely. Right. That's like a supernatural thing.
Right. So if I'm shy and I do something that aggravates that shyness, that would be going beyond.
Especially when it's in the realm of Torah and mitzvahs, obviously, right? Like in the service of God. Right. But yes, in general, even when it's not, so to speak, just like the notion of going beyond your nature is essentially the human part of ourselves. That's what makes us. Animals cannot, for example, they can only go according to their nature. That's what they're designed to do. Human goes according to the nature because we have an animal part, but then there's this soul part which it can tap into something which is beyond ourselves.
Wow.
So sorry for dwelling on this. Is it that experience of being uncomfortable when you're pushing yourself that is actually the trigger for the higher Havaya to start to manifest?
Yes, that's why we basically have this principle of Kabbalah's Ol. In other words, if you go to some yeshivas, right, for beginners, which are not of the Hasidic flavor, they don't, for example, tell you to put on tefillin the day one. And like just like this is like just a reality. They don't, because they say, why should I ask the guy to put on tefillin? Let him be in yeshiva. Let him get a taste for it. Let him understand what tefillin is first, and eventually we'll get around to putting on tefillin on the guy, and he'll like live a Jewish life. Whereas in Chabad, forget yeshiva. On the subway, you ask the guy sitting next to you if he's Jewish because he doesn't look Jewish, and he ready to put tefillin on that guy. What's the idea? Is because nice of a nishma, we will do and then we will understand. It's not just a nice catchphrase, it's literally the way we got the Torah. It's the way that you always get the Torah. It's the way you get the Torah every day of your life. You have to do things which are beyond the pale of your understanding to be Jewish. And then there's a secret like sort of recipe that goes along with that. It's not only challenging you to do that which you don't understand, it's also promising you that if you do it, you will then understand. If you do it without understanding it, nisa, and then nishma. The nishma will come, but only if you basically provoke yourself into this sort of leap of faith. And so there's this notion of Kabbalah soul, keeping the Seder, for example, like everything around the Chabad people call themselves Chochma, Bina, and Das, but they also call themselves Chochma, Bina, and Das, also the Rosh Tevers for Chayali Beis David, which is the soldiers of the house of David, which means you basically you give the story is you give a get to your wife before you go to war. That was unique about the soldiers of the house of David. In other words, they went to war knowing they were going to die, and so much knowing they like signed it into like law. They divorced their wives so that when they died in battle they wouldn't leave their wives agunas, right? And so this is like an attitude of insanity. You're going out every day to essentially be ready to sacrifice your life for the king, right? And this is sort of it's not just like a nice minhag of Jews. Those guys are really crazy. They really love to help people. You always find the Chabad guy at the earthquake in Zimbabwe, right? No, it's not because like they have a unique minhag. It's because that's Jewish, nice of a nishma. And the Rebbe is trying to like sort of rekindle what it means to be a Jew. Matisyahu and his sons. This is how it goes. If you want to experience the pure essence of Hashem, that's the direction, right? You can't be normal. You can't be rational in your approach. Being rational in your approach is Greek, and it means the death of the Jew, right? You're looking for the spiritual death of the Jew.
Well stated, Rabbi.
Thank you. Okay, so anyway, going back. So once they had this mysterious nefesh, they drew down the light which is above the Seder Ishtalshlus. Move on, right? 5 lines down. Right. End of the line. Shanes, the mysterious giborim beyond chalashim, v'rabbi ha'ma'atim. Therefore, the miracle of handing over the many into the few and the mighty into the weak, nimshach agdei mysterious nefesh alehem. That miracle came out of heaven because of their mysterious nefesh. And therefore, it's also mehavaya de la'ela. That miracle is something which is from the higher level of havaya, which again begs what question? It's not even a holiday, let alone not the 26th, right? It's not even the 25th. It's not even on the calendar of Chanuka. And seemingly, they mamish reached the level of havaya de la'ela right there. So that's really the source of all these different Maimarim, not starting with the Frierdiker Rebbe, but he was also in that tradition, and the Rebbe's in the same tradition of asking this question: why is the 24th not part of Hanukkah? Realizing the spiritual significance of what was happening above at that time, everyone should be asking that question.
Sorry, the question about the 24th goes back into the tradition.
It probably goes back forever, but in terms of Chassidus, it became very, very pronounced, and there's many Maimarim because of it discusses the spiritual, revelation, and that was such a high level. And if anyway, the whole Hanukkah is only there to mark an uncovering of these high spiritual lights. Why don't we add this more, which also had those same spiritual lights?
The 24th is Victory Day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the 25th is the dedication,
rest,
and then the 26th is when the miracle actually begins to manifest, because it's the first day beyond. The
25th we said was the miracle officially in the Gemaras. They found the jar of oil. That was the miracle of the 25th. There's other things. I mean, it's Chanuka. Chanu, Kafhei itself, it actually means the 25th, they rested. So there's all kinds of hints and so forth that the 25th was other things as well. But in the Gemara, like this, when it says, Mai Chanukah, what is this miracle? It says that they found this jar on the 25th. That's the official miracle of the 25th.
I once read a midrash that said that was the same, the oil that came from the dove of from the teva, that oil was passed down, and that's the special oil from
Had the
the.
insignia of the Kohen. It couldn't have been from the text.
Because which?
Had an
All right, let's
insignia
not
from
get
the
involved
Kohanim.
in that question for a second. It's interesting though. V'zeh shemavur ba'maimer. This that explains in the Maimer, who's Maimer, the Frierdiker Rebbe, and we brought it ourselves in Sif Gimel in this third chapter. This we explained. Yeah, wait a second. Didn't we say before that only the miracle of the oil lasting 8 days was the one that came from the higher level of Havaya? I mean, we literally just had this conversation. The 24th was connected with the name Elohim, the lower unity. The 25th was connected with the Shem Havaya, the lower Shem Havaya, the higher unity. And only the level of the 26th, which was a miracle which totally broke the laws of nature. That's the one that came from the higher level of Havaya. We've just completely contradicted ourselves and said that the higher level of Havaya was already present on the 24th, right? That only and there's evidence to it, because the actual miracle that took place on earth as a result of these different levels, there was still natural means involved in fighting that war. There was still natural like some kind of a human find in finding the oil. It's only the one on the 26th where it was completely beyond human hands, and that's why we said it was the higher level of Havaya. Now we're saying that because they triggered the Mesiras Nefesh, they brought the higher level of Havaya already on the 24th. It's strange, right?
Are we saying that it's completely supernatural, or that there could still be somewhat of an explanation that is just there to be able to?
Which one are you talking about?
The candles lasting 8 days.
There's nothing natural about that.
Nothing that.
How
I'm just referencing in
Except
my
for day
mind.
one.
I'm just referencing, like, for example, we say that the Red Sea split, but there is like, oh, but he put the stick exactly at the right time so that the west wind would blow towards the right, and there's like somewhat of an explanation that is helping
not
to cover
really,
up
man.
supernatural.
No, not really. The only thing that we say regarding the natural concept in the Red Sea splitting, the Reed Sea splitting, is just that it says in the Gemara every sea in the world at that time split,
right, except
for one, right? And so the world could have thought that this is some kind of a natural phenomenon, although I don't think anyone's seen that since, sure, right? So that's like the definition of a miracle that goes against nature. It's not. There's nothing natural about it. And also lighting oil, which can only technically last for a day, and it continues to light. It's not natural. Like the nature of oil is to burn away. The whole point is that there's nothing natural about it, and that's why we wanted to give it its own category of Havaya Dileila. Okay. Whereas in the other two miracles, there is some like
connectivity,
some connectivity of nature, even though it's pretty right, supernatural. Both of them as well, but it's not 100% supernatural. Right, like the 8th, the 26th is.
But there's always like a sliver of like legroom for
in the first two, not in the third one.
To be able to say, oh, this is because that,
right,
giving you a rational reason for why this is possible.
Right.
But you're saying that for the 8 candles, there's none of that. It's
none of that. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the main miracle. Okay, so anyway,
more.
Sure, thank you, my friend. Wow. So he's saying like this. This is explained the Maimer that only the lasting for 8 days comes from Havaya Dileila, the higher Havaya, not so winning the war. The Gam Hanes to Metzias Apach, and also the miracle of finding the oil. They come from the level of Hishtalshalus. We already said either Elohim or Havaya, either way they're associated with the Hishtalshalus. How do we drive that with what we're saying now? That even the Mesiras Nefesh of Matisyahu drew the higher level of Havaya. Yesh Lomar, we can say Shabanisim Eilu. That in those other first two miracles, here you go, that even though those miracles originated with the higher level of Havaya, nonetheless they were cloaked and garbed in the garments of the Hishtalshalus, which means that nature, they dressed up in nature, if you will. They were supernatural completely, but when they came to sort of visit us and show up in this world, they dressed up in something of natural garments.
He's referring to the first two.
First two.
Yeah.
But the truth is their source came from the place which was completely supernatural, which was evidenced by the fact that it was triggered by the Mesiras Nefesh, which triggers the infinite light. And we can say, this is also the reasons why If you recall, there's two different opinions, Bichlal and Nigla, whether or not the Chanukah at all was established with the war in mind or not. In other words, according to some opinions, Chanukah is established also to commemorate the winning of the war. And according to other opinions, Chanukah is established only to commemorate the oil and the lights, right? So if you recall from the beginning of the Maimer, we are holding under the opinion that Chanukah is also established to commemorate the winning of the war, right? Which makes the question only stranger why the 24th is not in it. How do we, mind you, commemorate the winning of the war in Chanukah every day for 8 days? Where is that found? In other words, commemorating the lights is when you light the menorah. The war? Ala Nisim, right? Ala Nisim. I don't know what you were going to say, but Ala Nisim. Right? Why? Because we say in Ala Nisim, Masar to Giborim b'yad Chalashim, right? You gave over the mighty into the few and the many into the few and the mighty into the weak. We mentioned the winning of the war every single day. Okay, so the point is there's two opinions, and we want to say that this is okay. This is of the reasons that we are holding of the opinion that the Yom Tov of Chanukah was also established to commemorate the winning of the war. Bichdei l'ramez, in order to hint, shegama neis nitzachon milchama shayach la'avayid la'ela. That's why we're in the Hasidic circles over here that this mimer is pushing this opinion, because we want to say that of course the winning of the war is part of Chanukah, because we already accessed the Havaya de La'ela, the second level of Havaya, in the time of the war. So since the whole Chanukah is an 8-day miracle to commemorate the level 8, which is the higher level of Havaya, right? So for sure, the winning of the war is part, in some way, of commemoration of Chanukah, because there too we reach the level of Havaya de La'ela, right? So that's what again in Nigla. Why does one opinion say this and one opinion say this? It's not because the guy's a genius and the other guy's a genius. Because at least in the roots, in the times of the Tanaim, Amoraim, and great masters of Torah, they would paskin because they understood the penimius of the inyan. In other words, there was a machlokes in Kabbalah. Some opinions held that on the 24th they did not access the Havaya de La'ela, and therefore they held that the Hanukkah is not part of Hanukkah. Other opinions explained that no, on the 24th they did access Havaya de La'ela. Therefore, for sure, we commemorate the war during Hanukkah. I'm saying this is what's justifying his position. Or you could say that those who paskin that they, whatever, I'll leave it at that. I was going to say that those who didn't learn Al Pi Kabbalah, they were the ones who paskin that we're not going to put the winning of the war into the expression of Hanukkah, right? Because they weren't tapped into the reality that level of Havaya de La'ela was already present on the 24th. And those who were then are really tremendously bothered by this question of why is that day not inside of Hanukkah itself? Yeah. It's only commemorated by Ala Nisim later. Kizesh Yom Tov de Hanukkah. Who mispar shmone? Okay, let's go on and see. That the Yom Tov of Chanukah is the number 8, as the Gemara itself says. Yom in the Chanukah Tmanya Inun, that there's 8 days specifically in Chanukah. Who lefisha mispar zeh more, because this number goes on. Ha'or shlemayel mishtalshlus, the level which is above the ishtalshlus. V'zeh Yom Tov de Chanukah nikba gam ala neis the nitzachon milchama. So then that the Chanukah does essentially honor and recognize and is established also for the winning of the war. It's because in truth, the root of that miracle was also from that same 8-level place. Yeah. Now, why is it not then placed into the holiday itself? We'll soon see. But the point is, according to the Kabbalistic opinion, that miracle came from that place. Therefore, they want to say when they established Hanukkah, it was established for 2 things: the miracle of the lights and the miracle of the war. And therefore, we say Al Nisim for that reason. Mm-hmm. And why? Because it came from essentially that 8-level spot. Okay. However, we already sort of hinted the answer why it's not really in the holiday is because even though it came from that place in its source, it cloaked itself into Hishtalshlus level thing.
Where it appeared not to be used.
That's a fundamental contradiction.
No, not necessarily. I'll tell you why.
The highest Havaya that's beyond,
right?
That can't be clothed in the entire reason there is a Seder Ishtal Shua is the way in which the light is mitlabesh.
Yeah.
Now you're saying, but even that highest, most high, can still be mitlabesh.
I'll give you an example.
So why did we bother with the Seder Ishtalshluyot then?
Okay, it's a good question. I'll give you an example, and in fact, it's going to come out in another sikha that we're going to learn about Chanuka, and I'll sort of revert it back to our avodas Hashem.
Sure.
Because basically, we were talking before about like this level of Mesiras Nefesh you can trigger in yourself versus your natural intelligence and emotions of your, so to speak, work-a-day week.
Yeah, no,
So every morning, let's say, you learn Chassidus and you daven, and you arouse yourself in this unbelievable Mesiras Nefesh, right? But its effect on you for the rest of the day can be in different ways, right? One is that really it has no effect on you for the rest of the day. You arouse like the miracle inside of yourself, but as soon as you go out into work, it's not at all seen on you, and your hishtalshlus like takes over and hides it completely, which means that it was sort of just like it happened, but it didn't have any effect on the rest of you.
Sure.
Then there's another part where it's not like burning like glowing coals all through your day, but like an ember of it is still recognizable on you, and people can tell that this is a yid who davened this morning, because basically you have a certain like wind under your feet, and you're approaching your workaday week with the remembrance of an experience that you had in the morning, which has a, so to speak, a roshem, a
continuation.
No, what's a roshem? An imprint upon you for the rest of it. Or there's some who have an experience of the Mesiras Nefesh, and it doesn't stop the whole day long. In other words, like everything that you do with your mind and your heart are like glowing with that you're doing everything in a state of Mesiras Nefesh all the time. So in other words, there's always a relationship between the infinite levels and the state of Ishtalshlus. Sometimes it gets swallowed up completely. Sometimes it shows itself minimally. And sometimes, like in the final miracle here on the 26th, it's like glowing in the midst of the natural world and making it clear that there's something beyond the nature at all times. Mm-hmm. So it's not that they have no relationship with each other. It's the degree of hiddenness or the degree of demonstration that it shows. And that's basically what we're saying. These three levels, they were all like essentially rooted in something which was supernatural, which is why we do see a miracle in all three, right? In other words, there is evidence of the supernatural in all three. It's just there's also evidence of 3 degrees of cloaking that evidence in a similar way that I just mentioned.
I think you mean super rational, beyond even supernatural.
The words are. Is that hitting home in any way there?
It's actually not, but I don't know. No, because it's still embedding the same problem in that we've just described a Seder Ishtalshluyot of a way in which the Or is mitlabesh. So
if you had no Seder Ishtalshluyot,
now described as a separate way.
Let me explain something. The point of reaching and this is maybe something we missed. If Hashem would actually just reveal that light, there would be no world whatsoever.
Sure,
there wouldn't be Chashmonaim. No, that's a really important point. So the fact that they're sitting there lighting the menorah, and they got up in the morning, and like they're a certain age and a certain time in the history, and there's a land and there's a sky and trees and stars and frogs, right? That's because the world is still going on. When we're talking about accessing this light, we're never talking about like this light completely negating the entire state of Ishtalshlus, which would basically revert creation into a state of naught. That's not the point of God. Okay. We're talking about, can this light show up in our domain? And then I was saying there's different ways that it can show up. If it would show up in like an unmitigated way, it would negate creation, and that's not what we're looking at for. We're trying to say in creation, I know I can have light which is limited to creation, because that's creation itself. Maybe I can even have a light which is slightly higher, which sort of undoes the boundaries of creation to some way.
But I get it.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, good.
I was wondering about the 24th. Is there any parallel to modern Jewish history, like the Gulf War, when all these Scud missiles landed,
Yeah.
39 missiles,
Right.
no damage,
Right.
no one's killed.
Right.
I mean, or any of the wars that Israel's had.
Yes.
I know we didn't get Mashiach out of it, but it seems like that was. It seems like
miracle.
You could argue it's all in the state of Shtashlis, right?
To some degree.
But you could argue that how could this happen by nature? It's really hard to imagine.
Right. So I'll tell you. When in the 6-Day War, they wanted to establish Hallel, and some did, right? And when it came into sort of before on the Rebbe's desk, right, the Rebbe addressed it publicly, which is an interesting address, because some Jews were saying like, you can't. They said it was like a secular thing, that it was like the war was won by non-religious people, right. And we can't call this a war. So there was a little bit of like unfortunately in the middle of all these miracles that Hashem was making for us, there was a little bit of like a machloikas going on, as there usually is, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. And so they were saying like, chas v'shalom to make Hallel, but then you have like the religious Zionists, they were saying like their belief is that Eretz Yisrael and its secular government is a messianic thing. So it was a whole conversation. The Rebbe like sort of got into the conversation, right? He didn't like to see his children fighting. So he said, let me clarify. This is a miracle on like biblical proportions. Let's start there. He says that the fact that it happened in Eretz Yisrael is even theoretically reason to say Hallel, because the only reason he says really, the only reason you don't say Hallel for a miracle is if it happens outside of Eretz Yisrael. This is why we didn't say Hallel for Purim. We switched the Megillah in place of Hallel, because really we should say Hallel for Purim as well. The only reason we don't is because it was outside of Eretz Yisrael. This is a miracle that Dafka took place in Eretz Yisrael. He said really the only reason we don't say Hallel is because all the Hallels are taken. He says, Al pi Kabbalah, that's the thing, if you have Kabbalistic eyes, you know how to resolve conflicts. He said, Al pi Kabbalah, there's 7 days on the calendar when there's supposed to be Hallel, and there's not more. Like Hallel is a rabbinic mitzvah, which was enacted to make 7 Hallels. So he says, you have Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, right? Which from the Raisa. Then you have really Chanuka and Purim, because even though Purim, you don't say Hallel, the Megillah is in the place of Hallel, right? Some people some poskim argue that is how we do Hallel. And so that's 5. So what are the next 2? When do we say Hallel? What's that?
We always go over this.
I know, what are they, Shimon? Not Rosh Chodesh, we don't say a whole Hallel.
Oh, no.
We're going to say Hallel today. The 17th of Tammuz and Tisha B'Av. Those are going to be 2 days of Hallel, and we didn't get them yet. So they're all Hallel's taken. So in other words, it resolves them.
Could you give one of them to Daviyah?
But could we give one? No, they're already taken. It's like can we just give like chesed to Yitzchak? He'll use it well.
No, what I mean is that there are 2 spare slots on the calendar that are currently occupied by days of mourning. But are we saying that it has to literally be those days?
Yes, literally those days. Yes. Because those days of mourning are going to be the greatest days of simcha when the mourning is turned into.
It has to be those days.
That's exactly. Why isn't there an 8th then in that case?
Oh, even better.
Okay. Anyway, the point is just that yes, they're miracles, and we're in the midst of like a whole. Let me remind you something, by the way. You could ask, if you want to make a holiday for every miracle, show me where the holiday is for Dam, Tzvardeya, Kinim, Dever, right? It's Kolel inside of the 15th of Nisan. Yes. So in other words, you don't necessarily make a holiday for every single miracle that happened in the midst of we're in the midst of the Geula. And when we finally celebrate it, we're going to say Hallel Tisha B'Av and Yud Zayin B'Tammuz. That's how we're going to That's how we're going to celebrate these miracles. They're kolel. In other words, we're in the middle of the process of Geula. These are miracles along the way, and we'll remember them for all times. And they'll be in the Haggadah of Mashiach. But the point is that when you're going to start paskening for Am Yisrael, you need to be Rosh B'nai Yisrael because he knows how to do it. Yeah.
That's why we can't just do it ourselves. We can't just start saying Hallel on those 2 days.
Exactly.
Can't you say that in the same vein that the Hallel of Purim is being said for
Megillah?
Through the Megillah? All right.
Then the Hallel of the 6-Day War is also being said on
It's the Allah Eish. Okay, we'll see you guys next time.
Well, Rabbi, why
Holiday Aces barbecues. Yeah.